we are still at the sort of around the $80, somewhere between 70 and 80, and it always was to be, it was to be there. But you're right. You had last night, you had a meeting between Alexander Novak, the Russian energy minister, and Khaled al-Faleh, the Saudi energy minister. Saudi has always been very hawkish and said, OK, we will not relax. They have taken out 1.8 million barrels a day between OPEC and non-OPEC and their non-OPEC friends. And they've always been very tough on saying we must maintain those production quotas. However, the overhang, the goal, mission accomplished, the huge inventories overhang is now all but gone. And as you mentioned, Venezuela is down 1 million barrels in a year or so.
However, OPEC ministers, they're talking about boosting output by 1 million barrels per day. Do you think this is just talk, or do they actually
some of them will.
that?
I mean, look, Saudi has an excess capacity of now about 1.6 million barrels. So there's some excess capacity also in UAE, and most importantly, Russia has new build capacity of about 700,000 barrels that the head of the state-run oil company, Rosneft, has always been jumping up and down, telling Mr. Novak, you need to produce more, you need to produce more, you need to produce more.
And will they actually put that on stream, or
they will
is this
put
just
some of
kind
that
of
on stream? They will be
political weapon?
They will put some of it on stream. And I think that there's a tag and tally. I mean, the Saudis want to have as little as possible coming on stream because they have Vision 2030. They want to rebuild their economy. That takes money, so a high oil price is good. Also, they obviously want to privatize Saudi Aramco, and the high oil price is a very good news when you want to privatize an oil company.
We still wait for this IPO to happen of Saudi Aramco,
yes, we are.
Right?
We're all waiting.
It has been postponed so many times. Yeah. Now, let's zoom out a little bit. If we imagine, that we hit a $80 mark for Brent crude, what would the impact be on global growth?
It would be quite an impact on global growth. It would take some, basis points off global growth. That's one thing. The other thing is also, and if I'm an oil producer, which would worry me more, is that thing called demand destruction. And there's the normal demand destruction of, obviously, if the oil price is higher during the high driving season, we're going into driving season in the US, people will afford less and they will drive less. And there's the structural demand destruction. There will be more research put into non-oil energy production.
Now, it's all about geopolitical tensions, Cornelia, at this point in time. The cancellation of the Trump-Kim summit and the ongoing U.S.-China trade war. How will actually the cancellation of the summit in Singapore impact the U.S.-China trade war?
Well, it's very interesting because, as you know, last week we had Liu He, the Deputy Prime Minister of China in the U.S., and there were trade negotiations. And Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, came out and said the trade war is off for now, and they both made a bit of concessions. In both countries, though, the hardliners were very unhappy with the concessions. And part of that was to keep China sweet and keep China on side for the Korean talks, because had they moved, somebody would have needed to foot the bill. And China said they would put as much as 30 billion into North Korea. Now that that is off, I think tension might ratchet up a wee bit again.
And do you expect Beijing to put more pressure on Pyongyang?
Maybe they will put more pressure on Pyongyang, but I think this time around it's really not Pyongyang's fault. It was really Pyongyang got very hot under the collar because the US said, oh, we look at the Libyan model. And obviously, when you look at the Libyan model, that entailed the regime change. And it didn't end too well for Muammar al-Gaddafi, did it?
Absolutely. I still remember reporting on that from Dubai. Now, let's zoom in a little bit and talk about the Swiss economy, because the IMD Business School in Lausanne released a report this week about the competitiveness of the Swiss economy. And basically, the US is now the most competitive economy in the world, and Switzerland is losing a little bit of its edge, it seems, dropping down to spot number 5. Yeah. Why is that, and what kind of reforms would you like to see?
Well, I think it was, and I think it's already happening. It was really because the very high Swiss franc made it very hard to export. And that's, we're still there. They've been evaluating it for the time of a very high Swiss franc. There's always a time lag. Now the Swiss franc has come down. And there was also, there I would like to see reform. It was also our, the ability of really moving people into Switzerland, high qualified people from the EU. As you know, we had some votes, and that became more difficult, and they thought a competitive economy needs a free movement of labor. So I would like to see our movement of labor free. We need it. We have 7 million people or 8 million people. We need more talented people from abroad to come in. I think in terms of the exchange rate, we are in a better spot. And, the backbone, the real backbone of the Swiss economy are the SMEs, the small and medium-scale companies, and they're all export-driven.
Absolutely. Now, it's Friday, Cornelia, and time for some fun. So we want to play the S&B challenge with you that we do with each of our guests. And this is basically the question, when you expect the Swiss National Bank to hike interest rates. So what time frame do you see for an S&B interest rate
I'm going
hike?
to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you and say not before Mr. Draghi hikes. So if Mr. Draghi hikes sometime next year, then they're free. But the reason is, in order to maintain the aforementioned competitiveness of the Swiss economy, and also ensuring that we don't go into deflation, we have a wee bit of inflation. You can't, if we hike the rates, especially with bad geopolitical environment, we become a safe haven.
But Cornelia, you're escaping our challenge. We would like to hear a number. Let's take a look. We have 2018 May and then 2019. Do you think it will happen this year?
No
or maybe
way. No way.
Okay, so we can already cancel that. Maybe January 2019?
No. I think we need to really wait until My thing is not before Draghi hikes.
Right, so sometime in 2019.
Sometime in 2019, when they're winding down now. They're winding down now the asset purchases, and then they will start to hike. Before they're hiking, no way will the
I'm going
Swiss
to
bank.
challenge you further, Cornelia, before we go. Beginning the first quarter of next year, or maybe later on?
Later on. I would say later on.